Let's now turn to the more practical part where we talk about building something instead of just criticizing and being unhappy with the state of the world. I would here start with creating an integral incubator or a canvas that helps people to get together who are then to create something, who help each other to create something. I found this to be a huge challenge already to get, as I mentioned, to really find the right people at the right point in time in your life so that you could constructively build something. I would start with creating a canvas very similar to Corey DeVos' idea of an integral directory where people can share their interest in integral and where you can search for other people who have integral interests by country, by specific region, or by specific profession and skills, and get together with them and build something. I would just add a few more structural elements to this idea of an integral directory or an integral canvas. So my idea of an integral incubator is something that helps you get together with the right kind of people around a certain idea or a certain kind of task that you want to solve, a certain kind of problem that you want to overcome collectively. As far as I can see, this process of getting together so far has not really been institutionalized. If you think about business ideas, this very first start of having an idea and getting from the very idea to the first prototype, this path so far usually is not institutionalized. You don't have a place where you could go and expect someone to help you with that. As far as I have heard from people who have been successful at building something, this path is something that where you're left basically alone with the challenges that you're facing. And there are a few attempts in business environments to help you along this path and to make it a little more likely that you actually make it alive through this kind of jungle. And that's where I'm heading with my idea. What I'm suggesting is a canvas where people can not only share their background, but where people can also share ideas for integral centers or integral hubs and can define a specific mission statement of such an integral hub and define the basic kinds of areas of responsibility that have to be covered so that it becomes more easy for people to see, well, what is to be done, what are the problems that we're facing here, what are the different competencies that are required, what kind of commitment would be necessary, and what is the time frame. This is something, for example, that is crucially important for building something. You need to know the time frame. You might agree with everything else that a specific community might be devoting itself to, the mission statement, the kind of business plan that they come up with, and so forth. But if the time frame is just slightly off, and you don't have time in the few months where the whole thing starts, it's just pointless for you to. You just won't be able to contribute. So we also need the time frame as something to filter by. And I guess the very minimum basic areas, problem areas that have to be covered is, first of all, to define, of course, what your integral hub will be about. Is it more about, as we had discussed already, about studying Wilber's work, or is it about some kind of notion of regenerative farming, for example, studying regenerative farming, or is it about some kind of therapeutic context, or is it about a more scientific context in bringing forth some kind of knowledge, or is it as something on the lines of recreation and vacation, where you could come with your family? There are many, many different ways of approaching the mission statement of such a kind of hub and such a community. You also would have to clarify how to get basic funding. You would have to come up with some kind of business plan. You would have to decide who owns the land or who owns the particular buildings on the land. So you would have to clarify. You would have to clarify who owns what and how the means are spread among each other. If you're trying to build some kind, if if you're following some kind of business idea and try to make money with it. Another one is how you make communal decisions. You have to clarify whether it's a more democratic approach, whether you're trying something new like holacracy, or you're going with the classical hierarchical models that are around there. You have to define basic community guidelines and roles, responsibilities that people can take, what you expect from people who come there. You have to think about how you structure the time, the schedule, how people will spend the days. You cannot just leave it open, but you need some kind of basic structure of what happens when you get up, when you get together with other people, what you do during the day. So you need some kind of basic schedule. You also have to clarify what the different relationships between the roles of those who live there more constantly and those who are coming there as visitors are. Another thing is that you have to also be able to bring together different interests, like individual interests, protect those, create safe spaces for those, create safe spaces for the individual interests of every single individual, but on the other hand also cover collective interests, interests that are in the interest of the entire group. These are the basic areas which need some clarification. So I would create on the canvas, I would create areas where people can sketch out ideas and take responsibilities for solving these problem areas. With some of these problems, you can actually delegate competence to the group or to the worldwide community. You can actually ask the entire world for help and gain information from large collectives and ask them for expertise, how to solve a specific problem. With other problems, on the other hand, you really need people on the ground who have the knowledge on the ground and who have the experience and are able to solve the problems as they arise. You just don't have the time to ask questions into a global community and expect some kind of useful answer. This won't be. This will be much too rigid, and it also takes a specific skill to enforce and to actually to bring into reality these kinds of competences and these kinds of skills. It's not something that can, in other words, be done unless you have the specific skills on the ground by a few people. But if you start out with the canvas, it could at least be clarified what the time frame is, what the basic mission statement is, what the basic competences are that are required, and people could contribute from very different areas. Someone might, for example, come up with the idea, while others might take the idea and then build it into reality, because we have different competences and different also different personalities, and some people are just better at coming up with really interesting ideas, but they're not so good when it comes to building these ideas and when it comes to taking responsibility and sticking with something and making it real. Others, on the other hand, are really good at building things, but not so creative when it comes to thinking about new kinds of solutions. So people could contribute with their own personal skills and with their own personal strengths, and could constructively get together. And this is what we have been doing in companies so far and in diverse businesses. So it would make sense to learn from those how they manage to organize different skills and different competences into meaningful wholes. This would be, for me, the starting point, the point zero, if you want. Because if you don't have the right people together, I don't see how you can get anywhere at all.